Well, hello, this is Dan Forbes with Dan Forbes Music, and I have in front of me a Yamaha G3 baby grand piano. This was acquired by a member of our congregation who works at Glen Oaks Community College, and he was able to get a deal on this piano for us. Generally, the first thing I like to do before I'm tuning a piano is to check the mechanical condition to see if it's worth tuning, but I think in this case we're just going to do a little bit of a before and after, so I'm going to just play a little song here. It's not horrendous, but I can definitely hear certain chords. Now if I do this Mozart. So if you can hear a little bit of a whine there. Kind of, so that's, just enough to drive a pianist nuts. So that being said, let's go ahead and just discuss a little bit what would be the process of tuning this up. So first thing is we get this music desk off, right? So this is called a music desk, and it just simply slides right off the track. And then now you can see inside and you can access this much better. And what we have are tuning pins. I'm gonna set this somewhere. Let me just set this behind me. See all these pins right here are what I'm going to use. I'm going to turn these pins to tune the piano. What I'm looking for right now, I happen to know this is in good condition, but if I didn't know that, I would be taking a good look at those bridges right there, and I want to make sure that there's not a significant crack, especially along these these little pins here that are kind of guiding the strings. And you don't want to see a lot of cracking there. You also want to take a look at the soundboard. Now, you can still have a piano that's playable and not, it's still useful that has a crack in the soundboard, but in some cases, depending on where the crack occurs and how the crack occurs, that could be something that has to be addressed. I like to check the pedals. So in a grand piano, you're going to have, you've got 3 pedals, and you see these are called dampers, and what their function is to stop the sound. So notice when that damper comes down, the ringing stops, and you see these dampers coming up nice and neat, and it's not all janky, and you can see and that's exactly what it should do. Now on the far left, there's what we refer to as the saw pedal, and that's kind of interesting because on the grand piano it's different than on the upright, because notice how the entire keyboard is moving. And inside the piano what's happening is there's these hammers that hit the strings, okay? And by offsetting the entire mechanism, I don't know, anyway, these hammers here, they're moving sideways, okay? And that means when the hammer touches the string, it's going to be a little bit less direct, and you're maybe not going to get all 3 strings, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do, to give you a less direct blow that's not going to hit all the strings. Now in this piano, it's actually got a functional sostenuto pedal, which you're not going to certainly find that a lot of upright pianos either don't have it or it's sort of a false sostenuto. But if I can explain what that means, by pressing this middle pedal, I'm able to make one note ring and hold the damper up while other notes would continue to play normally. So right there, this damper stayed up. So that's kind of a fun little thing. Now, it's a kind of a fancy thing that, again, a lot of pianos don't even have it, but it's, I guess, easier to use a sostenuto pedal than to grow a third hand. So it seems like our bridges are in good shape, our soundboard is in good shape, our pedals are working. If I go looks like the keys are functioning. Sticking keys are quite common on pianos. In this case, there's no keys that are sticking. If I look at the actual strings, I don't see anything overly excessive as far as rust. I guess the other thing would be the pin block. Now on a grand piano, it is actually possible to see underneath the pin block by taking all this off, and then you pull the action out, and then you can actually look underneath and see where these pins stick through a piece of, there's a hole that is going through the play into a big piece of wood, and then you can see under this big piece of wood that has all these holes in it, and if you see a big crack running, then it's like, oh, that's something that's going to need to address. Now on a vertical piano, that's not necessarily possible to see, but what you will find, what the tuner will find is, like, as you tune the pins, the pin goes backward, I mean, fully, not just a little bit, but fully. It's like it just bounces right back. In that case, you're going to have to either pound the pin in, or use CA glue, or maybe if it's bad enough, then maybe the piano's done. Now with a high-end piano like a Steinway or something, they might go through the bother of repairing a pin block, but most pianos you're not going to repair. I mean, you're not going to replace a pin block on most pianos. So, at any rate, at this time, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about pitch and what the first step would be. So I've got this app called TuneLab on my iPad here. And I'll just pull it up here a second. And what I would do is I go into this app, and in this case I'm going to create a new tuning. Now sometimes I will load a tuning, like, hey, I've tuned this piano before, or I've tuned one very similar, it's the same model and so forth, and I would just pull up one of these. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a new tuning, and the reason for that is each piano model has a little bit different harmonics to it. So in other words, what a tuner has to know is how to stretch the octaves, and it's really interesting. So, okay, so this is, we'll just say that this is a string, right? This rubber band here, okay? And as I pluck the rubber band, not only is the rubber band vibrating this length between my two thumbs, but it is also vibrating in halves and thirds and fourths and so forth. Okay, so like if I split it in half, it's going to make a higher pitch, and this is going to make a really high pitch, right? But that's the fundamental principle. So when you actually hear a note, you're actually hearing more than one note. And just as proof of that, just so we can demonstrate that. So I'm going to, right now I've got A down, okay? And the first harmonic would be a half, right? So I'm going to play the next A, and what you're going to hear is the pitch of that A in this A. So because the damper for the string is up, so the sound won't stop, you're going to hear what we call a coincident partial. You hear that faint ringing. So even though this note was not played at all, you can hear this note within that. Okay, and then I'll try like the second partial here. A little fainter, right? first partial is always going to be the most easy to hear. Okay, so that's what piano tuners use. We use harmonics, right? And this electronic device is just helping me with those harmonics because, unfortunately, with the piano, it's not quite as easy as just check what the pitch is and match the pitch. Because with piano wire, it is very thick. It is designed to last, to be very durable, because you can imagine, like, if strings broke during every concert or performance, this would not be a useful instrument at all. It's very thick. It is not super flexible. Now, if I have a longer length, it'll flex a little bit. But now imagine like I'm at the second partial or the third partial or something. And you can see it's really firm, right? Doesn't have much give to it. And what that means is those partials are going to be sharp. So the octaves have to be stretched. So in other words, these notes will be slightly sharp on purpose so that these notes agree and sound good. So we're going to pull that up a minute. All right, do a new tuning. And we're just gonna use, okay, new tuning. Doesn't want to lay flat, does it? Okay, there we go. Don't want to do that. New tuning. Ask for C1. And we're gonna save it. C2. Save it. Do C3. We'll just do a couple more here. In a minute, I'll show you what we call mutes and why we use those. But for now, we'll just roll with that. And what I would do at this point is I would measure to see how far out the piano is. And I'll go ahead and do that. We're going to do something that we call, okay, we're going to say this as, let's see how far out this piano actually is. We do something called overpull. Now, the reason we do overpull is if we have something that is more than 10 cents sharp or flat, and when I say cents, 100 cents is the difference between one pitch and the next up and going from B to C or C to C sharp. So in other words, if your piano is 50 cents flat, that means your C is coming up between C and B, or if it's 100 cents flat, that means your C basically sounds just like B and so forth. So we're going to see how bad this is. So we're going to go ahead and do some measurements with that. Okay, so let's just take a look at that quick. So it looks to me like the low end, yeah, that's definitely sharp. So what has happened is because we had a very humid summer, the bottom end of the piano is a little on the sharp side. I'm going to take that out because it's a little weird there. Yeah, so this can happen where the piano is a little on the sharp side. Now in the middle here, these are pretty, you know, close. If you're at 0 or 5 or something like that, that's not even really worth, in my case, doing a rough tune on that area. So I'm just going to focus on doing the bottom, bringing that up, because what's going to happen is if you have something that's significant, right, more than 10 cents, like say it's 50 cents, and say that I move it to perfect, well, it's going to bounce back 15 cents, because what happens is over the course of doing all these strings, you're going to have basically the internal components of the piano are going to push back. Like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So in order to compensate, so you don't want to fine tune it if it's really that far out. You want to first rough tune it, and then you can fine tune it, and then it becomes more like a game of mini golf where you're just trying to move it a little bit this and a little bit that, because there's no sense in trying to get it perfect if it's just going to bounce a lot. So we're going to go ahead then, and I'm just going to rough tune like this bass section mostly, and then I'll just show you that's a quick process, and then I do a more detailed fine tune. So I'm going to grab, and this is called a tuning hammer or tuning lever, and that's what I'm going to use to turn these pins that are inside the piano. Okay, so this is going to be a quick process because this is just the rough tune part of what we're doing. Okay. Okay, now we're moving into the section of the piano that's pretty close to pitch. So as I said, it was mostly the bottom that was sharp badly. So now we're just going to go ahead and start to fine tune here, and I'm going to use these mutes. Now, you notice that for most of the notes on the piano, there are 3 strings. Now these bass ones, the very bottom one, there's only one big fat copper wound string. And then you've got some more in the bass bridge section that have 2 strings that are still the copper wound string. And then once you get into the treble bridge, you're looking at 3 strings for each note. And with the 3 strings, the 3 have to sound as one, otherwise, you know, you get kind of yeah, and you know, you can hear that yeah, which just doesn't quite sound right. It's going to drive some pianists nuts. So in order to get those 3 to sound as one, first we got to figure out where is the correct pitch, right? So we're going to only do 1 string at a time and get them all correct relative to each other. And then once we've achieved that, then we'll go back and unmute the other strings. And I can show you a minute here. So I'm going to take this this ribbon mute, sometimes called a temperament mute, and what I do is I'm kind of weaving it in between these strings. So now, like when I play a note, like this note here, only 1 string is sounding. So there's no more that yeah, because I'm only hearing 1 string. But I still want to make sure that those middle strings are correct relative to each other. In other words, so that the chords sound nice, the octaves sound nice, all that. So that I've got it correct as far as the pitch. And then once I have it correct, I can tune the outer strings so that they're in agreement. So just weaving this here. Now, some tuners use other mutes or screwdriver, all kinds of things to get that mute in, but this is just the way that I tend to do it. And this isn't going to go the full length of the piano, but it'll be enough to where I can get started. And really you want to tune the piano off the middle, because once you get out here, you're stretching it quite a bit more as far as, you know. Okay, so I'm going to turn the overpull off, stop using overpull, and let's see, we're starting on Okay, that sounds better. Okay, now we're at a part of the piano where we don't have this music. We're gonna have to start with these music. So we're all tuned up now. I'm gonna play the same things that I played when we first started. Yeah, that does sound a lot better. Definitely that right there, much better. Ooh, much better. You got it, John. Yeah, great. Okay. I'm gonna play just a couple more, just a little bit, you know.